What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sports360. I'm Jeff Fannell, and I'm here with my man, Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob, how are you doing tonight?
What's going on, man? What's going on? Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, too. Doing well. We're sitting here right after the Memorial Day weekend, a wet weekend, a cold weekend on the East Coast. It wasn't much in the way of hot dogs and hamburgers this weekend, but so that was kind of a downer. But back in the saddle with a lot going on in the world of sports, and so overall doing okay, man. We're in June now, and so pennant races, not pennant race. I guess it's too early for that, right? But these games now in baseball. You're starting to see where teams are right now, right? And so that's kind of interesting. We're not going to talk baseball tonight, really, but I can't let you go without saying, how in the world do the Yankees get swept by the Detroit Tigers, man?
Oh, man. I don't know, man. I don't even know. Listen, my wife told me, maybe you should stop watching Yankee games because you get pretty frustrated towards the middle of the game, and then you're not yourself anymore. And I think she's right, so I'm taking a little break, me and the Yankees. We need some space because they're not playing good baseball right now. So the Yankees and I are on a break until further notice.
You need some space.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to reassess the relationship.
Yeah, they're playing some bad baseball, man.
Yeah.
And I know some players are hurt, but it's just bad baseball.
Yeah. Well, look, it's June, so 2 months are in the books. Still have 4 months to go. So a lot of baseball. Not a baseball left to be played, but yeah, right now you can't be happy. Yankee fans can't be happy. And I'm not going to say anything about my Mets because the last time I talked about my Mets, they went on a skid. So just going to leave that alone. But there are a couple of things though, Rob, tonight that I do want to talk about with you. And the first is in the world of tennis, where top-ranked player Naomi Osaka has made headlines, right, by withdrawing from the French Open following, comments that she made in advance of the tournament that she was not going to participate in media interviews, citing mental health concerns of athletes generally who have to participate in these interviews, but also personally. And then she followed that up by not participating in a mandatory interview after her first round match, in which she won at the French Open, and received some criticism, was fined $15,000 by the French Tennis Federation, was threatened by the other Grand Slam organizers that she faced discipline if she continued to not participate in the media interviews. And then on Monday, on Memorial Day, she withdrew from the French Open, citing again her battles with mental health issues, even saying that since 2018, she's been battling with bouts of depression. So that's a big story, Rob, and there's a lot to talk about with that one, but broad view, what's your take on the Osaka story?
I think it's like you said, it's a very heavy topic and it's very layered. But just initially, her reasoning for skipping out on the media obligations and all that stuff. I think that mental health is a big thing, and it's something that's very serious. And this is a young lady who's only 23, and she's dealing with bouts of depression and anxiety and things of that nature, which are very serious. And especially today, where more people are speaking up about it, whether it's athletes or just everyday people. But I think this gives a little bit more perspective that athletes are everyday people. Just because they're on ESPN, on Fox Sports, on all the stuff, they're still regular people. They're still everyday normal people. They just happen to have the athletic ability to do what they do on a professional level. And I think her coming out and saying that highlights that just a little bit more for people who may have forgotten or ignored it or criticized her initially when she decided to skip out on those obligations with the media.
And there were a number of people and organizations that did, in fact, criticize her. In fact, the French Tennis Federation, you know, after the first round match, when Osaka did not participate in the interview, the media interviews, the French Tennis Federation tweeted out a picture of 4 tennis players who did appear at their press conferences. And they tweeted they understood their assignment, or they understood the assignment, which was a backhand slap at Osaka for not showing up. And then they deleted the tweet. So, that's kind of a snarky tweet, or they know what they're supposed to do kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you had other people and in media outlets, Deadspin, saying that Osaka was misguided and called her downright unprofessional. And so there were some who were very critical of her. And as you said, I mean, these are serious issues. And you can say what you want about how much, and I'm not saying you, but anyone, about
Yeah.
how much money these athletes might make and all the rest of that. But that's not the point. And I do think that by her raising these issues, ahead of the tournament, but more importantly, Rob, when she withdrew from the tournament, right? Because that statement was saying, my mental health is more important than this game, more important than this tournament. And I have to get away and I have to take care of myself. And, I think by doing that, she has really, shown a light on this issue. And now people all across the sports and even outside of sports are talking about this and having a conversation about athletes and mental health and what, if anything, we can do about it. And I think that's a good conversation to have.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this isn't new, and I'm happy to see that athletes are taking that step and saying, listen, I'm dealing with stuff. Yeah, I make 10, 20, 30, 40 million a year, but I don't care about that. Like, I'm dealing with some internal struggles. I don't know how to deal with them. And just because I'm an athlete and I play at the highest level doesn't mean I'm immune to what everybody else can get. I can still have these mental issues. My mental health may be at risk and things of that nature. So I'm happy to see athletes stepping up, especially big name athletes, that are in the spotlight already. Them coming out to say things like this, I think it starts the conversation, like you said, and it's a conversation that needs to continue. And things need to change across sports in general to help these athletes deal with these, with the mental health issues.
And Rob, some of the comments have focused on the interplay of athletes competing and then athletes participating in press coverage of the events, and saying they go hand in hand and they're all part of the process. They're all part of the ecosystem, right? That the media brings exposure to the sport, brings exposure to the athlete. That helps the sport and the athlete to make money. And part and parcel of that calculus is that athletes have an obligation to cooperate, and participate in press conferences and in media events. And it's all part of the process. And as a professional athlete, you know what you signed up for. And you can't take the good, you can't take the publicity, you can't take the positive stories and go on your merry way without fulfilling the other side of the coin and your obligations to give media interviews and so forth. And I think we can understand how this whole ecosystem works, and that's fine. But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that the issues that Osaka has highlighted do not need to be addressed. And it doesn't mean that this ecosystem is operating perfectly, as if it doesn't. Maybe it needs a tune up, maybe it needs modifications, maybe there need to be some tweaks to the process, some safeguards, some protocols, some resources that help athletes who are having issues like Osaka is having, apparently. And so I don't think they're mutually exclusive, right? So we can understand the media obligations athletes have, but at the same time saying, but we still have to be mindful of mental health issues and pressures and those types of things and provide help to athletes where needed.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'll even take it, and maybe this relates, maybe it doesn't, but even throughout the COVID pandemic, we saw a lot of different jobs in different industries adjust to the fact that things have to go remote in order to continue. So they found ways to make it work. They changed the way they do business. They changed, you know, I'll use your word, the ecosystem of the way you work in order to continue business and make sure that everyone has what they need to be successful at, whatever their job is. And there's no reason to think that the way sports runs their media stuff or whatever it is, there's no reason to believe that that can't change in order to help these athletes succeed at their obligation of talking to the media, whether it's before or after, their professional event. So I'm pretty sure there's ways, and I don't have the answers here. I wish I did, but I think there's a way. There has to be a way to adjust what you already have in place to better fit, what athletes are going through. There has to be a way.
And Osaka, in announcing that she was withdrawing from the Open, she said that when the time was right, she wanted to work with the tennis tour to explore ways to make things better for the players, to make things better for the fans and for the media. Understanding that there is a balance that needs to be struck. So she's not asking, for special rules for herself. She's not asking for a pass, to say, well, we just shouldn't have to participate in the media, even though at first that's what she said coming into the tournament, that she wasn't going to do that. But then being fined and so forth, she then made another decision, that was to withdraw. But upon withdrawing, she has noted that there's a need to strike a compromise and a balance, and
Yeah,
so she said she looks forward to working with the tour to begin discussing ways to, to reach that balance. And I think the tour needs to take her up on it. I think athletes need to be involved, not just in tennis, but in all sports. They need to be involved in the discussion. League bodies and governing bodies need to be obviously a part of the discussion. But Rob, I really believe that mental health professionals have to be front and center. And I know they are to varying degrees in some of these sports, but to whatever degree in whatever sport mental health professionals are engaged, I believe that engagement needs to increase, because these are real issues given the
yeah.
demands on these athletes, not only on the court but off. And so, I really would like to see at some point a real change with all the stakeholders involved coming and trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah, definitely agree, man. Listen, athletes put in so much time and work to get their bodies ready for the sport that sometimes maybe the mental health and the emotional aspect of it gets left behind a little bit. And I think that's where, to your point, where mental health professionals, can be involved to make sure that the mental side of the sport and the physical continue on the same path, and not one is lacking more than the other. And I think organizations, teams, leagues, whatever the case may be, they have to invest in these mental health professionals because it's much needed. It's needed.
Yeah, and Rob, earlier you said you noted that she's 23, and she's obviously a young woman, talented athlete, elite tennis player, ranked number 2 in the world, Grand Slam champion, um, endorsements, prize money, successful in her chosen field at a young age. Seems to have it all, right?
Yeah.
And yet she's saying, I've been battling bouts of depression. And she even said since the US Open in 2018. So since, a point in her life of tremendous success and accomplishment, she's been battling depression because of these obligations. And to me, Rob, you know what? That should be a warning to parents. And the reason why I say that, parents who are pushing their kids to
Hmm.
achieve, to go after the gold ring, to go after the prize, whether that prize is a scholarship, whether that prize is the pro ranks, whether it's in sports, whether it's in music, you know what I mean, or entertainment, whatever. But
Yeah.
there's this big push. Little Johnny and little Sally, they have to go out there and compete in lacrosse, soccer, volleyball, baseball, whatever the sport, right? And everybody's pushing to develop the athlete, the athletic prowess, special lessons and trainers and this and that and the other, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think parents need to be careful here too, because as you said, 23 years old, she seems to have everything, but yet she's battling these issues. Because maybe there was an imbalance along the way. Because I think if you're going to get at that elite level, the focus on the physical outweighs the focus on the mental. It just does.
Yeah. It does.
And at some point
100%.
you
Yep.
have to pay the piper, and for parents, I think, they really need to be mindful as they go about this, and anyone who's working with an athlete, as they progress, to not overlook the mental health aspects of of competing.
Yeah, and that's huge. My kid, he's 3, and they have these little races for kids. It's like ages 3 to like 7 or 8. And this is a kid who loves to run. He takes it after me, loves to run. And for some reason, at these races, he doesn't want to run. And and my wife and I had the conversation of, he's 3. If he doesn't want to run, we're not going to tell him he should run. Nothing like that. It's more, we're proud of you. Whether you run or not, we're proud of you. And he even said it the first time. He said, "Oh, but puppy, I didn't run. Are you sad?" I was like, "No, I'm proud of you because you're here, and that's all that matters." And I said, "Are you happy that you're here?" "Yes." And that's it. And that's big because at just 3 years old, he's recognizing that some people may not be happy with
Mm,
the fact that he didn't run
hmm
on something so simple. A 3-year-old telling me that, and I'm getting a little choked up talking about it, but it resonated with me. And we never put pressure on him to do any of that stuff. But the fact that he saw that, and I don't know if maybe he saw some other parents say something to another kid or whatever it was, but that's something my wife and I later on had the conversation of. He's paying attention to these things at just 3 years old. So we need to make sure that whether we want him to run or not, and if he doesn't run, we make sure that our body language shows that we're okay with him not running, and that we continue to show him you're fine. If you don't run, guess what? You don't run. It's fine. We'll try again next week. We'll still get a treat after. Call it a day. Because at the end of the day, he's only 3 years old. And it's crazy to me seeing that from a 3-year-old and just imagining what she's going through at 23, fully aware, fully capable of hearing, seeing, and just everything of what she has to go through at her age. So it's, like you said, the mental aspect of sports can't be left behind when the physical is moving on up.
Right. And when so much emphasis is placed on it. And, that's a revealing story about your son at such a young age, but knowing and believing and wanting to please his parents.
Yeah.
And, that doesn't go away, when you're 5 or 7 or 9 or 15 or 18, you know what I mean? And as that child develops into a young person and into a young adult and then into a full blown adult. And so that's why I believe that, this is so important. And, we'll see what happens here, Rob, but I think it's going to be one of those situations where these leagues and governing bodies are going to have to put their money where their mouth is and make some real investment. And again, it's not as if it's not going on. So I don't want to appear that that's what I'm saying. There has been investment over the, in recent years, more and more into this issue, mental health for athletes. And that's a good thing. But I believe an examination needs to be had, conversations need to be had, and adjustments need to be made where they're needed to put more resources, to make changes or whatever. And it's something that has to constantly be a part of the process, because it's that important. And one last thing I want to say, Rob, on the point of youth, I've noticed that Little League World Series, for example, right?
Mm.
These little kids are being interviewed after games,
Yeah.
and so they're being treated like adults even when they're kids. And so I think when we see this whole media focus and talk to the media is something that is starting at younger and younger ages. And for me, that exacerbates the challenges that we have in this area. And that's why I think this is a very important issue. And Osaka has started a conversation that I think needs to be had, and we'll see where it goes. But, one of the, bigger stories out there right now, and it has far reaching impact, not just in tennis, but in all sports and at all levels.
Yes, and hopefully we see some more continued change.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, Second area tonight, and speaking of change, where we need to see some change, Rob, is with fans at NBA games. And again, not all fans, but there have been some incidents during the NBA playoffs that make you go, what's going on? Ask the question, what's going on, right? A fan poured popcorn on Russell Westbrook as he was leaving the court going into the tunnel. He was injured, poured popcorn on his head. In Madison Square Garden, a fan spat on Trae Young. In Salt Lake City, surprise, surprise, racist comments were made toward Ja Morant's family. What else do we have? Oh, the bottle throwing. In
Kyrie, yeah.
Boston, a fan throwing a bottle of water at Kyrie Irving as he left the court, nearly hit him. And then most recently, a fan came on the court in D.C. during a game between the Wizards and the Philadelphia 76ers. Rob, what in the world is going on here?
Man, I wish I had the answer for this one too. Because we lived in a world where the only access to sports, and barely because we almost lost sports due to the pandemic, but our only access to sports was on our TV. We couldn't see games. We couldn't even see recreational games down the street at the park because they were all canceled. Parks were closed. So now fans finally have the opportunity to see games. And for the NBA, almost full capacity, I think, in every arena. In the playoffs, Like, this isn't just a random game at the beginning. This is the playoffs, man. Like, this is everything. And these select fans want to go and act a fool. There's really no other way to put it. And it's terrible to see. It's sad to see, like, the spitting, and that's the one of, like, we're in a pandemic still, first of all, and that's disgusting in general. But spitting on a player is disrespectful, throwing stuff at people. And then here's my thing. If Westbrook, who's been a victim of this stuff for years now, people continue to come at Westbrook. If he snaps one day and does a Ron Artest and goes out there and hits a fan, everyone's going to look down on Westbrook. Oh, he shouldn't have done that. What's wrong with him? He should know better. Well, all this stuff about Westbrook, even though he's been constantly attacked by fans and criticized and said things and middle fingers and whatever, but Westbrook would be the bad guy in that situation. And it's unfortunate. So I don't know what has to change, what change can happen. I'm not sure. But this needs to stop right away, because now it's gotten to the point where we're expecting something to happen every game of these playoffs.
There have been too many. There have been too many. And as you said, they've been coming back to back almost. And to your point, if any of the athletes involved acted, in a similar fashion toward a fan. So if Trae Young spat on a fan, or if Russell Westbrook poured popcorn on someone's head, or Kyrie Irving threw a bottle of water at a fan, you know what I'm saying? What would have been the result of that? Lawsuit by the fan, maybe some criminal prosecution, depending upon if the bottle hit, or you know what I mean, or whatever. Maybe the player is suspended, maybe loses his contract, loses endorsements, and gets vilified.
Yeah.
That's what would
Yep.
happen. That's what would happen. And so for me, Rob, I don't like that fans who engage in this pretty much skate. They have to pay. I know the fan in Boston got arrested. We'll see what happens there. I don't know what happened to the fan in DC, whether that fan got arrested. Trae Young said he didn't want to press charges against the fan in New York. But, something has to give here. I think these fans, if it's a criminal act, they need to be prosecuted. I would like, if it was possible, for them to be fined, right? If there was some code in the municipality where the action takes place that could result in a fine being imposed. Hit them in their pocketbook. But you know what else
Yeah.
I think should happen? These offending fans should be exposed. We should know who they are. Tell us who they are, their names, right? Because neighbors should know. If that person lives on your block or in your community, you should know that joker lives in your neighborhood. The employer should know that was your employee who acted the fool last night, and maybe that person gets fired, or the business owner loses some customers or something. There needs to be a price paid, so that the next fan thinks twice or three times before they think about engaging in this type of conduct. And there needs to be some deterrent, because security is in the arena. I don't think that's the problem. Security is there. Can it be improved? Perhaps. But this is not, to me, about security. This is about fan conduct. This really is about fan conduct and
Yeah.
what can be done to alter that conduct. And I think if we're going to alter the conduct, we may have to heighten the penalties that these fans face, so that a greater deterrent is created.
I definitely agree. I 100% agree. Put their face out there, put them on Front Street, let the world see who they are, embarrass them. They have to be embarrassed, because if not, like you said, shout out to the content creators and Twitter and all this stuff, because they're the ones that actually show who it is. We don't get that from the leagues. It's people on Twitter who zoom in and find their stuff and highlight the faces of the people who are doing these incidents or the dumb actions, whatever you want to call them. But right. I agree. Yeah, put them out there. Put their face out there. Let their name be known. And action has to be taken. And I agree with the fine. If there's a way for teams or leagues to like maybe as the fine print on the tickets or something like that, or you know, as an agreement, you agree by entering this arena that you're going to behave a certain way, and if you don't, you can be penalized. You know, whether it's a monetary thing, I think they should be banned from the league in general. Period. First offense, you're banned from the league indefinitely for life. But I agree, fine them, put their face out there, let it be known, and embarrass them. I think that's the best way to completely stop this kind of behavior.
Now, one of the things I've heard, Rob, and I'm interested in your take on this, is that by the media covering these events, they're giving these fans, so to speak, their 15 minutes of fame. And that is serving to encourage others to engage in conduct that's inappropriate, which is why we're seeing these events happening on the heels of prior events, right? Just seem to be going on, almost snowballing. Do you agree with that?
I do, because as long as there's not anything that is going to stop them from doing it, I think they will continue to do it to gain publicity. Because even the Celtics fan who got arrested, we'll see what happens with him, but I'm sure his friends are like, "Oh man, I saw you on TV and you got arrested." He's a 21-year-old kid, and I'm sure his friends were all thing, and maybe he'll go to school if he's in school and, "Oh, I saw you on TV, man. We should do it as a group next time, or we should do whatever." But I definitely agree. I think the media coverage, I don't think its intention is to make fans want to do this, but I think fans look at it in that way. It's like, oh, well, we can get on TV. Maybe they have like a TikTok or a Twitter page that they want to get publicity on, and they think by running on there, they're going to get that. So I do agree on that part, but I don't think the media's intention is to, you know, create a 15-minute of fame for these people, 15 seconds of fame, whatever the saying is. Yeah, but I agree. I think it does make fans want to do it, but like I think kind of what you said, if they have that punishment to deal with, if they do that, I don't think we'll see any of this happening, or very, very, very little of it occurring in the future.
Yeah, I do think that there needs to be as strong punishment as possible. And look, there are some people. Look, the people who engage in this. Let's be clear. Their thinking is twisted, whether in the moment or overall. I don't know, but to throw a water bottle at someone, to spit on someone, as you said, first of all, to spit on someone at any point, but in this era of COVID in particular, that's twisted thinking. To run on a court in the NBA or on a baseball diamond. We've seen that from time to time where fans, jump on the baseball diamond and run around. When you know darn well you don't belong out there. You know darn well, and you're out there. It's twisted thinking. And again, whether it's, a person has some real deep-seated issues or a momentary lapse in judgment or whatever the case may be, but something is not being processed correctly. So that's why I said this is fan behavior. This isn't, I'm not saying security doesn't need to be addressed and examined. You always have to do that. Player safety is paramount. And so you have to do whatever you can to safeguard, players' safety when they're out there on the court, on the field, or whatever. But I do believe that this is an issue of fan conduct, and we have to find a way to deal with this and to create those deterrents to keep this from happening, because it's getting to the point where it's alarming. Because if you really look at it, Rob, it went from popcorn, which, you pour it on someone's head, no one's going to get a concussion from popcorn being poured on their head, right? But then it went to a bottle with water in it being thrown from afar. right? And so
Yeah.
think about the impact that could have had. We went to someone sitting courtside and spitting on Trae Young to now someone getting on the court itself. So you can see it's getting worse, right? It's
Yep.
it's it's progressing, and it has to be nipped in the bud. And hopefully we won't see any more of it during this NBA postseason. Hopefully we won't see any of it during the baseball season. But it is something that I'm sure the leagues are concerned about, the players are concerned about, and anyone who's involved in sports is and should be concerned about. And hopefully, um, we can create those deterrent. You know what I mean? But the leagues and those involved can create the deterrence, and we can see this kind of conduct come to an end. One can
Yeah,
hope,
man.
right?
Yeah, sports got to get their act together. We got two topics here where we want to see some change, some good change.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, brother. Well, listen, it was good to talk to you about these two topics. I mean, these are obviously important ones, and we haven't seen the end of it. So we'll keep our eye on it, and as things develop on either front, we'll be sure to come back and talk about it. But you know, certainly something that wanted to talk about tonight and to get your views on. So I appreciate that. So, all right, brother, we put another one in the books.
That's
Um,
right.
in the meantime, I'll keep you in my prayers, man. Because I know you're going through some stuff with your Yankees and everything else, and hopefully you guys can reconcile and get back together. But maybe you just need a break from the relationship. Those things happen from time to time.
Yeah,
But
yeah, man.
but but hopefully, man, they'll get it together. And it's a long season, Rob. So I don't want you to get too high or too low as we go through it. But listen, thanks for coming on, man. And we're gonna come back again as we continue to keep our eye on the world of sports. And we'll be back next week with another edition of Sports 360.